Y'all on the beat.
What's up, guys? May 3rd, 2020. Welcome back to Hacks Facts Episode 3. Crazy stuff going on in the world right now. A lot of places still locked down. A lot of stuff. You can't go and do your normal routines. Can't get into your normal patterns, right? Life is disrupted for many people as we know it. But today, we got a very good guest on that can help you guys work through some of the challenging mental aspects of the lockdowns and how we can actually work through things together as mental skills, one of the mental skills experts from the Houston Astros, Connole is joining us. Sean, welcome back. Hacks Facts Episode 3. What's going on, man?
What's up, guys? Glad to be here. Let's get down to business. What's up?
That's right. Now, first, before a word from our sponsors real quick. None of this would be possible without help from American Batsmith. We've talked about them before on the show. Great little bat company out of Salt Lake City, Utah. Check them out at www.americanbatsmith.com. They make really good products. Birch, maple, ash. They do all that expert quality. They get, no matter whether you're a college guy or a pro guy, they get you guys the best cuts of wood, the best quality wood. I use them. A lot of other pro guys are starting to use them. Really good company. I really, I encourage you guys to go check them out. Anyone that's watching that's looking for bats, there will be baseball soon at some point, and you're going to need bats. And so make sure you go check them out. Go give them a shout, Jacob Huff over there in Salt Lake. And then also brought to you by Rack Hacks Remote Training, the #1 remote video analysis company. We're tech-enabled. We're helping you guys stay prepared, making sure you're not losing shape, you're staying in shape. You're going to be ready to go whenever these lockdowns end and we get back to playing baseball and doing what America does best, and that is playing baseball, America's pastime, taking care of business. Anyway, without further ado, we got to talk to Sean, because Sean is the mental skills expert. Sean, it's his profession. It's what he does. What do you – just getting right into it, man. Like, what kind of – I know you're in Texas right now. Mm-hmm. And you've been assigned. You were going to be with the Corpus Christi Hooks in the AA affiliate this year with Houston. What can people do right now when they're stuck in their house? Their patterns are disrupted. They can't go to their facilities. They can't train. What do you think guys can do right now mentally?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, you hear it a lot, but it really digs deep, is to really have a solid routine. And, I mean, we're going to be a product of all of our habits. And if you keep sitting around on the couch, keep thinking about training, and not actually setting a consistent, hey, every morning, 9 a.m., I get warmed up, then I go hit, and then I go lift after that. Then I have lunch, then I watch some video, then I have some free time to help my mind clear, and then I do a couple things to wind down before bed. If you have that consistent routine, like that's just going to add up into a whole month of positive development. So I'd say it's a big one. And then one topic I've been researching a lot recently is actually sleep and making sure that you're having good quality sleep, not just a high quantity, but a good quality of that sleep too. And it's really easy now with all the different ways that we can analyze our sleep and see if we're having good sleep stages with our Apple Watches or Fitbit watches, stuff like that. And if you're having a consistent, circadian rhythm, you're going outside to work out, you're getting good sunlight during the day. And then in the evening, you're making sure you're away from the blue lights, staying off your phone a little bit more. That helps you get better restful sleep. And then that helps a lot of hormone release during your sleep. And that helps you improve your swing, your strength, your arm, a lot of recovery, and then just your mentality too. So I'd say those are two really big things that are just, there's almost no excuse for not having those set. Good routine and good sleep each night.
Right, and a lot of that is stuff that you can control. And there's so much we talk about these days about being out of, there's a lot of things going on right now you can't control. You can't control if your season is canceled. Mm-hmm. You can't control if, your season's delayed and there's scheduling issues. But there's something to be said too for the confidence that comes from seeing a routine and kind of being able to rely on that. And I mean, obviously working with professionals. It's a little bit of a challenge to maintain and stick to that same routine day in, day out from the whole season long. You're playing, I think at Double A, they're playing 140, or so games. That's a long stretch with many guys. And I think your perspective is good because you've seen the college game. You've been around some of the shorter seasons as well. When do you decide to temper the routines? Because, it's tough to stick with the same thing across 142 games.
Yeah, a lot of it's going to come down to your goal setting. So we always talk about short-term versus long-term goals, and then you've got your process and your outcome goals. So you want to make sure you have a good mix of the two, actually. And right now it's a really heavy time of just focusing on the process, which is usually good, but we don't have any results right now. Like no one is really, unless we have really good technology and you can look at your scores on, say, your blast motion, something like that. It's really hard to get those objective measures. So that's really important to be able to shift back and forth between process and result right now. But then for short-term, long-term, I kind of always use an example of like a Navy SEAL who just fell out of a boat. Say their boat capsized and they got to swim to shore. If you're focused on the short term, you got to think about every single stroke. You're swimming, going up and down a wave. That's really hard to think of. But if you're thinking about, hey, once I get to the island, I can start a signal fire. I can contact my family. I can get warm. I don't have to be swimming anymore. In that situation, it's almost better to focus on the long-term goal. So that ability to shift back and forth is actually really important. So you want to set up your routines right now so they actually are scalable to, hey, short-term for this week, I just want to wake up earlier. Like that's my goal. I want to wake up earlier. That way I'm going to have better energy in the middle of the day to get my hitting and my workout in. And I'll have more done throughout that day. Then you're still thinking about your long-term goal as well of, once the summer season kicks in or once fall season kicks in, I've got this goal for my OPS. I've got this goal for my on-base percentage, or I want to have more walks and strikeouts. So you definitely need to set up both short-term and long-term goals and have that really good skill of being able to shift back and forth of, hey, shoot, I'm still in quarantine today. Maybe I don't need to think about short-term goals. Maybe I need to focus on my long-term. And that could help you be motivated more during that day in that specific instance. And then thinking about those process versus result goals, it's also good to shift back and forth too. So it's a really good skill to have both established and then be able to switch back and forth based on whichever is going to motivate you more in that situation.
Right. That's a good way to cope with some of that routine fatigue. I don't know if that's something that is evident, but
Groundhog Day syndrome of feeling like everything's the same. But yeah, just to sum that up again, you always want to have process goals and you do want to have some result goals, but you always want to have short-term and you always want to have long-term goals with those as well. And then just being able to shift back and forth for whichever is more appropriate.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that would be helpful for most of the population these days and, our heavily disrupted areas. Kind of shifting gears a little bit because it's interesting you mentioned technology, and obviously that's kind of a recurring theme with these talks. Mm-hmm. When you've been working with professional guys, you've been working with guys in, elite settings, do you notice that their particular mindset, do you find challenges with certain guys absorbing technology, and are there are there traits or are there tricks that you guys use at the professional level to kind of help people absorb more information?
Yeah, it's a really good question because, you're always looking at how is it going to help me? Is this worth, I don't really like having this thing on the end of my bat. Is it going to help me more than it's hurting my grip right now? So one of the biggest ways is just education, making sure you have a really good understanding of all the metrics that it's going to give the players and how it's going to help them in the long run, and that we're all focused on their development. It's just as part of my success for you to improve and get to the next level. So we want to see you guys understand that these numbers are giving you something really tangible that you can work with throughout your whole career. And then just motivate them with having real time, results for some of them. So making sure that you just kind of have the iPad out or the computer out so they can see in real time what's going on with their swings and when they have a good swing versus a bad swing. And that can be really motivating as well because you're actually seeing the score on it.
Yeah.
So it's part of that buy-in has been, a lot of it is just making sure you explain the purpose of it and the idea behind everything. And then whenever someone has a better understanding about what it's used for and that it's further development, then you usually get a lot more buy-in after that.
Right. And it's frustrating at times with certain players are, obviously more capable to kind of take on new ideas or new perspectives. What's frustrating is oftentimes, and maybe you can speak to this, but oftentimes in my experience working with guys and myself, obviously it's never just a straight line of you start here, you make the adjustment, and then you just get better immediately. There's going to be, peaks and valleys, not just in the training process, but obviously in, the season with results and everything. But going back to the training process, it's more important, I found, with certain guys that you have to almost fight to get them not to give up on an adjustment early because they might actually get worse before they get better. And as a coach, it's frustrating because you'll see players and you see the player they could be. You see the potential they have. And their mind, it's that classic like fixed mindset versus growth mindset thing. But professional baseball, you have such little time in certain situations where guys have to put up numbers immediately. And you don't always have the benefit of allowing them to kind of struggle at first. Now, some organizations are different. Some organizations will look at that struggle as a good evaluation period because they see how guys handle, the inevitable failures. Mm-hmm. Are there particular tricks you guys use, or are there ways you guys treat those periods with players early on? If they're told to make an adjustment and they struggle, if they're not trusting technology, the results they're seeing, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the most difficult things that we have to deal with. Really in any industry, when you're expected to perform and you need to change up one of the key characteristics that you've always believed in, or some part of your swing or any part of your pitching mechanics too, and you're not seeing the results right away. A lot of it does tie into that growth mindset, understanding that everything's part of a process and that you need to work on little things to help out in the long run. And no one likes to be bad at something. Like it never feels good to be, inefficient with what you're doing or incapable, and it wrecks your confidence. It kind of translates into other areas of your life too. But that ability really does come from the coaches, from that mindset. And it's really our job to keep reinforcing improvements and learning. So instead of just reinforcing a base hit when someone has a slump, it's reinforcing the line out. Right. Like, hey, that was a really good swing right there. Like that's exactly what we're looking for. Like you're getting on track, and you're trying to just reframe their idea of success in their head from just the result focus to, okay, when I have a really good routine, like leading up into my next at bat, I'm kind of thinking about the scenarios that are going to come up when I'm in the hole. And then when I'm on deck, I'm just clearing my mind, thinking about one cue. And when I'm in the box, I'm just thinking about that one external stimulus. I'm just thinking about wrist position, and that's it. Like that's when I'm at my best. And it's a skill for coaches to kind of get that out of players too, to ask the right questions of, hey, why did you feel so good in your at bats today? Or what was successful when or what were you doing really well when you were successful back during this week when you were really hot? Right. So the ability to have the athletes think about what made them successful and what part of their process made them successful is really key. And then pointing out to them like, hey, that's why you're really successful. But yeah, just to kind of sum up that whole question, it is a really tough time. But again, it's about education. You gotta really make sure that you're letting them know why you're making those adjustments. Let them know that you are feeling compassionate about what they're going through too, instead of just kind of being hard nosed and you're just like, hey, get better or we're done with you. That's not the right approach. You got to have a little bit of that human touch and understand their emotion as well. So let them know that it's going to be tough. I'm here for you and I care about you getting better. That's why I'm here working with you.
Right. And it's a microcosm. I mean, what's happening right now globally, it's kind of a microcosm of what baseball players go through frequently, which is there's so much that you can't control. You have to find ways to lock in on what you can control and make that the stimulus and make that the focus. And then, number one, you don't feel completely demoralized every day when you fail, because as a baseball player, as a hitter at least, we've only been talking about hitting, but you're going to fail. And how you handle those failures and how you use them can, dictate how soon you get back to like consistent levels of success. It's kind of like being stuck in a lockdown where you don't know what is going to be available for you to do, but there are certain things you can control. And it's interesting that it definitely agree with that.
Another good strategy is just reminding them about competition.
Right.
Just always making sure like, hey, we're playing this game tonight to win. Let's make sure we remember that. And if you get a bloop hit and your swing doesn't feel great, but you get the game tying RBI in the 7th, like that's still a big deal. We're here to win games, and that can kind of refresh them and reframe their thinking into, shoot, yeah, we're playing. We're supposed to be having fun. Like games are fun. There's a score and there's a reason. So that's another strategy that's really important as well. Brings the kid back out of you.
Not just be stuck in one mindset, but being able to move from one tool to another. Like what you just described, you're saying lock into the process, but don't be afraid to step back completely and just focus on competition, or, know when to shift from that fine focus to that step, that bigger kind of open, not so refined focus. And that's tough for kids.
It's a skill. It's important. They both have value.
So
the influence of crowds.
Well, we're obviously about to see a potential shift, and there might be a lot of crowdless baseball, crowdless professional sports play this year. Our season, in the Frontier League, we might be crowdless if we get a season in. I think everyone's expecting Major League Baseball to be crowdless. As part of a mental skills team and, part of a group that prepares guys, what effect do you think that's going to have on players' performance, compared to their normal outputs?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. A lot of times you hear about the phenomenon of systematic desensitization. Just when there's like a fly in the room and you're working on the computer, you hear it right away and you try and stop thinking about it and it just keeps buzzing. And then after a while, your brain is like, that's an unimportant stimuli. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to block that out and focus on this. So our brains have that ability to, once they realize something is not affecting you and it's not important, then you kind of block it out and you shift your focus on what is important. So I think with the crowds, sometimes you just get so used to that routine of having everyone there. You have that buzz. You can tell when it's going up or down at certain levels. You could always hear if someone in the beer garden's yelling over, specifically, they're yelling out your stats for the year, or if you're going through a slump or something, you do hear that a little bit more clearly than other things. But it does take a stronger skill to block that out, particularly. And then you would shift back into, having no fans at games, and it would be really different at the beginning. It's a big source of joy to have a bunch of kids at the field and always asking for a signed baseball or something like that. And that's one of the great things about baseball is that everyone's, right there on the foul lines next to you. And it's a great part of the atmosphere. So it would be a little bit different, but you think about the internal and external motivators. The internal ones are very strong, and they're usually what drives majority of human behavior. So it would be a weird shift to have that external. It is nice to have a home game and have your home fans and have a bunch of people at the stadium and enjoying a couple nice plays and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it might be just a couple games, and then you get desensitized to it again. You get used to that new routine. So I think that window is going to be really important on those like first 3 or 5 games. I think that's when when any huge influence on performance is going to happen.
Right. And you know what, as you think about it, every baseball player, even those who've played in the major leagues, they've all played in front of no fans at some point in their career.
Yeah.
You talk to minor leaguers and guys talking about the Gulf Coast League and the Arizona League. One of the biggest complaints is that you're playing on the same fields every day. There's no stands. There's no, you still have to bring it. You're still being evaluated, but there isn't that like aesthetic atmosphere that you're used to, where it's, it's warm and and you have the home fans and you have the away fans, and there's a bit of that unique personality of that ballpark and that atmosphere. So it'll be interesting to see. It's definitely something worth. It's interesting you mentioned like the fly analogy, because again, when we're talking about trying to teach younger guys or amateur players how to handle mental prep, oftentimes you can tell. I can tell. I feel like when I look at players, if they're kind of distracted or perturbed by certain things in cages or in training settings, and you got guys come back into the dugout sometimes and they're talking about the strangest things that were pissing them off. Guys like my batting glove. Like, I think, really, dude? Like, it's your batting glove? Like, your batting glove is the reason that you chase the through and fastball above your eye? Like that. And then the thing is, people often say, they say, well, that's just that's not mental toughness. Well, I think it's more nuanced than that. It's not just that it's not mental toughness. It's that you were unable to lock in on, you're able to look past the distraction and get the job done.
Yeah.
Don't you think that this is great. All of these tools, and you're putting tools in a toolbox. Because like you said before, you have to have different, it's not just being mentally tough and on the same level all the time. You have to be able to gravitate from one focus set to another. Don't you think that these are obviously very valuable traits? And are these being lost in the evaluation process when you go to showcases and kids are just concerned with their tools in high school? And kind of what I call like the nasty, the other side of the tech and the tools evaluations. You're missing out on this other stuff that actually really matters. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's not to blame anyone who's focused on tech or who's focused on exit velo and those type of metrics, because those are easy. Those are really easy to measure. Right. You bring out the radar gun and it gives you a number right away. So there's no blame for everyone looking at those metrics, but they don't drive everything. That's for sure. And the human brain is one of the most complex organs in all of history of the world. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can measure how the brain works and how you can quickly do that with a recruit if you're trying to see if he's D1 or D3 level. And that stuff is really important, but it really comes down to there's no radar gun for the brain. So you really need to be able to ask the right questions to players. And really, I always thought it was really important when I was recruiting to talk to the player one-on-one. It's important to get to know the family and to talk to the parents and everything like that. But once you actually hear his or her answers to, what are your goals for college? And if they answer, I'm trying to have fun, get a degree, and I do like to play ball. And I was like, nah, okay, all right. There's some positives in there, but I'm really looking for, I want to win a championship. I want to be all conference. I think by senior year, I might be, an All-American. I don't know. If I work hard, I can get there. Or I want to be on a team so badly and I want to help my teammates win the first year. Answers like that where you can really see that they have a group-centered mentality, that they want to help a team win, and that they have a vision for their future too. Because if they don't really know where they're driving their car, then they're not really going to get anywhere. So right. It really just comes down to being able to ask really good questions in that evaluation process, and making sure it's the right setting as well, making sure that it's not like the end of a showcase, everyone's leaving, they're turning the lights off at the complex, and they're rushed to spit out some answers to a really complex open-ended question. So you got to make sure the timing of it is really good so that they're comfortable and they can give you genuine answers and be authentic about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really difficult but really, really important part of the evaluation process, and it's such a huge role that summer coaches and high school coaches have when a college coach gives them a call and says, what was he like on your team as a leader, as an individual. Make sure you ask about how was he during his really high times, how was he during his really low times. Was he the guy who goes 0 for 3 with 3 Ks and sits at the end of the bench and is like, I just can't wait to go home and play video games?
Right.
So it's really important to understand or talk to the different coaches that he's been with so you can see what his real-time reactions are like. Instead of just one time at a showcase, you see him do well on 5 ground balls and 15 swings, and you think that he's going to help your program out exponentially. There's a lot more that goes into it. It's a long season, and you can't tell how well someone's going to do just from one showcase. That's for sure.
Right. It's how far away do you think people at the highest level are from assigning some sort of quantitative? I mean, obviously, you talk about football. You have, what is it, Wonderlic test, whatever the test is.
Mm-hmm.
How far away is it from having even like a quantitative ability to measure those traits?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It also kind of depends on how everyone feels about it and the policy and the ethical side of it as well. Making sure it's like not too invasive, and we're not hooking kids up to a EEG head scanner while they're taking their swings for the PP showcase.
Yeah.
So it depends from the ethical side as well of how much we can dive in there and if there's any changes to that. But maybe within the next 5 to 10 years, we could see some more common links being sent out just, via Google Drive or something like that. And we're like, hey, can you fill out this questionnaire? It looks at your attentional styles, your ability to perform under pressure based on past experiences.
Right.
But then that also ties in with it's all subjective, and that's just a player thinking about how they feel they perform, and they're going to try and beef up those answers and make them look really good so that they get recruited by a certain coach. So it's really tough to make sure that those answers are going to be, or those ways that we measure an athlete's mentality, if they're going to be subjective or objective. And it is one of the, the big goals of sports psychology is to be able to apply all of our theories and our practice so that you can actually see the benefits. And then if you can actually measure the benefits, that's the really big challenge of sports psychology. And you can see how much the industry has already grown and developed over the past decade, just the past decade. Almost every single team in professional sports has some influencer of sports psychology or sports performance or mental skills or something like that. So I'm hoping in the next 5 to 10 years that something like that, it does become a lot easier to measure, but it's really tough to tell what method or what medium it's going to come through.
Very much the new training protocols and kind of this new school of training thought. It's just as much about finding ways to keep the player engaged on the present without forgetting about some of these, looking at real-time data to kind of see how the progress lines up. And I think that, and just from a physical standpoint, that obviously we endorse that. We do that with our players. I think mentally it's low-hanging fruit to kind of help guys look at certain results they've had based on their mental approach at the time. And even just recording, and like we talk about this all the time. Okay, we're measuring tech, but don't forget about what it is that you were doing that affect mentally, that you were thinking about that affects the physical results.
Mm-hmm.
And That's a simple thought, but that's very profound, because a lot of people, they're taught to either just go dumb, so to speak, and just be locked in on the present, or they're being criticized as being too, you're overthinking. You're thinking too much. And obviously there's a middle ground where you can get the best of both worlds. That's what you seem to be saying. But as far as your background, when did you know that you wanted to go down this road? Because we go back a while. I know, for those out there.
Yeah. So when did I get into mental skills and sports psychology?
Yeah, and I was saying, for those that are watching, coached at Division I program in the Big East at Georgetown, coached at Hood College in Maryland, a good Division III program in Frederick, Maryland. So you kind of had a background, obviously a very good college baseball player at Washington College in Maryland. But what, in addition to the baseball background, what kind of led you down to specifically the mental skills stuff?
Yeah, so I think it was middle of high school, once it was becoming time to think about what colleges to go to, and then, of course, what to study at school. Psychology was always something that really interests me, and just how complex the brain is and how interesting behavior is, and how no two people are really the same at all. And everyone reacts differently. That was always something that really interests me. And then the strive to predict behavior, or to be able to set up really good performance was something that I loved. So I just got into general psychology at Washington College. And then it wasn't until I think it was either my sophomore or junior year, we had a new coach come in. He was really big on sports psychology and performance psychology. And I was like, wait, hold on a minute. There's people that are applying psychology to sports. And I was like, I got to get in on this. This is awesome. And he was like, hey, if you want to go to grad school too and get your master's, you'd be able to coach at the same time, and they would pay for school. So I was like, dang, that sounds like the most ideal situation I could get into. And his name was Travis Turgeon. He's been a really positive influence in my career, professionally and individually, personally. So it was that junior year that I really started applying the concepts of sports psychology, noticing my attentional abilities and how to shift attention on different things based on the task, understanding how to build and sustain confidence, the importance of establishing and maintaining a routine for my games. Even mindfulness was an area that I started to really get into my senior year. I would meditate, just go through a quick 5-minute body scan on the bench with eyes closed, and just worked on that ability to focus on one thing at a time, moment to moment. And then also it had the benefit of checking and making sure that my body was ready to play. Right. And that led me into studying exercise science and sports psychology at Springfield College, and then started my coaching career right there. And then again, we talk about of getting into more of the applied side of sports psychology. So yeah, I just always loved the idea of understanding behavior, and the goal of being able to try and predict or improve performance was a huge driving factor for me, for sure.
Yeah, it's nice to see a guy with a baseball background who's understood what it's like to play as well have the added insight of the psychology, the educational background. How important is that master's? I know for guys out there that are listening, they might, part of what we're doing here too is we want to show guys that there's more to the industry. There are more opportunities than just playing. Playing is obviously a very important part of the industry, but there are a lot of other paths that you can make yourself, for yourself to, gain entry into baseball and into sports. Obviously, are most of these organizations looking for guys who get their masters?
Yeah, it is really important to have that higher education there. I think I'm pretty certain it was a requirement for the position I have now.
Yeah.
I was very hopeful, and it was my goal to get into professional baseball earlier on in my graduate career. So once I started classes over there, I knew that was something that I wanted to do, was get into pro baseball with my sports psychology experience. So I did have an understanding that that's where I wanted to end up. I didn't know what the title was going to be, where the location was going to be, what exact level it was going to be at. But I knew I was pretty much done playing, 100% sure. So I knew I wanted to work on my professional side. And then I just fell in love with coaching at that point too, because it was the first time that I started just coaching on a team and interacting with players from that sense. And there was a lot of positive reinforcement and good rewards from being on the team at Springfield College and getting that first taste of, learning about sports in the classroom. And I mean, they have some of the best facilities and sports programs in Division III on the East Coast, and they're an incredible school, not only to play at but to get your education at as well. So they were really a huge influence on understanding, how to do research on players, how to have one-on-one meetings with players throughout a whole long season and work on their mental skills. So the amount of information and the amount of skills that I achieved from Springfield and that experience right there, it was just insurmountable, and I definitely would not be where I am right now without having gone there and having that higher education there for me.
Sure. Got a couple questions probably. I know you get about 5 minutes left, but going back to the showcase stuff, and then actually no, before we get into that, because you mentioned Travis Turgeon, obviously we talk a lot about Ken. We kind of use a lot of Ken Ravizza stuff over here. There are certain types of teachers and mental skills guys that we kind of gravitate more towards. But are there any particular leaders or anyone that whose thoughts you really prescribe to that are out there in the industry?
Well, a good one right now, especially with the Chicago Bulls documentary going on, is George Mumford. He's really good. He was their I think they just called him their guru back in the 80s and 90s. He's got a really good book out called The Mindful Athlete, and I read that back in 2015, and it was just eye-opening. Not only because the ideas were so simple and he presents them in a really logical fashion and everything, but then you realize that he's doing it with, the top athletes in basketball at that time. So it's incredible to see that application and see how it works, and understanding how strong the mind is, and really realizing that if you keep strengthening your ability to focus on one thing at a time, moment to moment, then it's really going to translate into your performance. So George Mumford is actually a really big one that I follow right now. I'd say he's one of the top ones. And then Ken Ravizza, he's one of the big ones as well. Those are pretty much the two big ones for me.
Okay, that's good to know. Going back to the showcase stuff, kind of leaving kids and leaving our amateur guys that are watching this with kind of a lasting impression. What can they do with such a limited time? You kind of discussed it before, but what is it that they can focus on that can speak volumes to recruiters or to scouts that show their mental fortitude and their, some of these good mental skills traits that we're talking about? What can they do to showcase them in such a limited window, when they have such a limited window to get to know the people evaluating them?
Mm-hmm. The competitive edge is going to be huge. I really want to see someone go out and know the score of the game the whole time. Try and get an understanding for what the lineup is going to be the next inning. I want to hear those athletes talking to each other on the bench about, hey, I wish we could have turned that double play right there. If you gave it to me more on my right shoulder, I would have been able to avoid the slide a little bit. Like going through, and the gamesmanship has been really lost in the showcase and kind of tournament style modes, where everyone, it's a 2.5 hour time limit, and whoever has a higher score, if we're keeping score, they win. So it's really important to see that guys are still creating that competitive atmosphere and fostering that type of mentality. That's huge. So everyone's getting stuck with that time limit instead of focusing on actually competing and winning. And once you get to the college environment, and all 40 guys on the bench are with you and they're all trying to win, like that's a powerful feeling. That feels really good. And
Right.
it's something you need to work hard for as coaches to make sure you're getting those type of players. So it's really important for them to show that they're competitive. And it's also really important to see how they react during failure and see how they explain or how they attribute what their performance was accredited with. So if, hey, why did you drop that fly ball? I didn't sleep that much last night. There's a car parking in the lot. Like they're making a lot of noise on the gravel. The sun was just peeking over that cloud. Like we don't want to hear all those excuses. We want to hear how you're going to perform better the next time. So it's really important to see how they think after failure or even success. Hey, you had a pretty good day, 2 for 4 with 2 doubles. How'd you feel? I just got lucky. You're like, no, come on. Like, I want to actually hear why you think you're successful, and I want to hear the reasons of why you think you're doing well, and they got to be good reasons too. So it's really, really important. I can't stress those two enough to like show the competitive edge is still there, and then really start eliminating excuses, because then it prepares you to direct your behavior in a way where you can explain why you're doing everything with a purpose, for a reason, focused on a certain goal.
Yeah, man, always a pleasure talking to you. And, I know, your time is valuable, but I really appreciate you getting on and kind of sharing some of these things with us.
Yeah, of course. I wish we had more time. I'd be
Yeah.
certainly happy to hop on the phone or do another Skype call anytime in the future with you. Love what you guys are doing. Love following your social media accounts on Twitter and Instagram. It's always great content, and it's a good balance of the old school and the new school, knowing how important both of those are and not trying to be too far on one side. So keep up the work you're doing as well. Love it, man.
No, I appreciate it, man. For those out there, we'll put Sean's social media information up, and assuming we do have a season, Sean's going to be AA with the Corpus Christi Hooks on Gregorio Petit's staff with a couple other good guys. I think Jason Candler's on that staff too. But anyway, I know you got to run, but thank you so much, man. And we'll probably call it there. But thanks everybody for tuning in. This is episode 3 of Hacks Facts, and we hope everyone's staying safe out there. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out. Look at all the social media. Make sure you look at Sean's social media. A lot of good stuff out there. And keep working on the mental game in addition to the physical game. It's going to pay off. It's going to pay off down the road. All right.
Awesome. Take care, everybody. Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.